Hello everyone. I wanted to make a video about something that I think is important. Obviously, you are here because you have either gone searching for a video on how to set up ATAK with Meshtastic, or the glorious algorithm has served you this video because it thinks you'll like it. Either way, I'm glad you're here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up ATAK with Meshtastic in a way that'll help you avoid causing grief for everyone else in your local mesh. It is structured in a way that those of you folks who are unfamiliar with Meshtastic or ATAK can stick around and learn why the information I'm sharing in this video is important. And those of you who are already familiar with both can just skip ahead to here and get right down to the meat and potatoes. So, for those of you sticking around, let's talk about a few things by which Meshtastic operates. The first thing to be aware of is channels. Meshtastic uses something called a channel to designate a pathway for which communication can occur. Channels can be used to separate or organize traffic, as well as create completely private areas to exchange info or precise GPS coordinates with your peers. We should note one very important aspect about channels, which would be the number associated with the channel. Number 0 means that it is the primary channel. And this has control particularly over the way that your node communicates across the board. And then there are numbers 1 through 7, which are considered secondary. The secondary channels can be used for whatever you like private group messages. The reason number 0, the primary, is important is because it determines what frequency slot your node uses. The frequency slot is interesting. Frequency slot is one of 104 predetermined slots, or let's just call them specific frequencies, within at least the United States band. By using one of these slots, you can be sure that your Meshtastic device will successfully communicate with another one on the same slot. You can think of the frequency slot kind of like a channel, but I'm not going to use that terminology here because that might be confusing. In this case, just be aware the frequency slot directly correlates to a specific frequency in the band. So here in the United States, we use the 915 megahertz band, which is a set of frequencies from 902 megahertz all the way up to 928. So with that said, it's important to know that the frequency slot set is governed by the primary channel's name. Let's take a look so I can show you what I mean. Here is the Meshtastic app, which should look familiar to most of you. This is running on an Android tablet, so if you're running this on an iPhone or an Apple device, it's going to look different for you. Unfortunately, I don't have one, so this whole video is going to be on Android. And ATAK is an Android application anyway. There is an iPhone equivalent, but again, I don't have one, so unfortunately I can't show you what needs to be done on there. But hopefully you can take the information that you've learned from this video and correlate it to that one. If I go into my radio configuration and I look at my channels on my node, I'm connected to this one right here, by the way. We see that we have a default channel of long fast. This channel has a PSK key of AQ with 2 equal signs. That is my encryption key. Long fast is encrypted, but everybody owns the key. But this name here, the long fast name, which I'm not going to change right now, governs what frequency slot I'm in. If I back out of the channels and I go into my low raw settings, I can see that I am set to frequency slot 20. That frequency slot is set to 20 because my long fast is my primary channel. If I am to go into here and change this to something else, we'll just call it something then, and I save that to the node here, it's going to confirm. And my low raw frequency slot is going to change. Look at that, it went to 92. That 92 is calculated based on what the name of that channel is. So if I go in here and I instead change this to some instead of something, and then I go again and I check my low raw settings, frequency slot 58. When I type a name into that channel, the frequency slot is calculated by a hash algorithm. That is way above my pay grade to explain, but it's best to simply understand that it's not random. The words or numbers that I type in there will always result in the same frequency slot, even if I punch them in on another device. It's just one of those things that makes sure Meshtastic works for everyone. One thing to note from this so far is that Meshtastic requires all devices that wish to communicate with each other to exist on that same frequency slot. That means we have to share that frequency with everyone. And in the world of RF, it's generally only possible to have one device transmitting at any given time. There are ways around this, but unfortunately at the time of writing, Meshtastic doesn't implement any of those methods that I know of. Again, it's a bit above my pay grade, but I digress. So what does that mean for us? Well, it means there's a finite amount of airtime that we can use to send our data. We have to be kind to those around us and ensure we're not taking up more space than we need. In Meshtastic, we have a way of measuring how much of that space is being used up. We abbreviate it with something called ch.util. Oops. And this is an abbreviation for channel utilization. We want channel utilization to be low, real low. When it's kept manageable, the mesh works really, really well. But once we start getting, up above 15, 20, 30% channel utilization, the mesh starts to get pretty sluggish, and all the nodes have to wait for a period of available airtime to send their data. Obviously, we don't want to take up a bunch of airtime, or other people won't be able to use the mesh, and our messages will likely start getting thrown away. Now, this terminology might be confusing because in this case, we're not talking about channels, even though we're saying it's channel utilization. We're really talking about that frequency slot again. This terminology could change later, so if you're watching this at a later date and this isn't making sense to you, perhaps that's why. The metric, though, is measuring how much airtime is occupied on the frequency slot, not our channel. Remember, our channels are just a way to separate traffic. Everything else uses the same slot. This is just one of those things that makes Meshtastic a little bit confusing to talk about. So as a Meshtastic user in general, we want to keep our channel utilization to a minimum. That is the best way to do it because it keeps the network reliable and it gives our packets of data the best chance to survive and to make it to their destination. With all of that said, wouldn't it be best to just use our own frequency slot? This is what this video is really about. I have learned by experience that ATAK just does not bode well on the Meshtastic default configuration. The ATAK packets will easily bring that channel utilization way above what's reasonable. And if we have a lot of devices in our mesh, ATAK will cause issues. That is why I want to bring this video to all of you, so you can set up your ATAK device with Meshtastic in a way that gives you the features you're looking for in ATAK without causing grief for everyone else in the mesh. So, without further ado, let's get started setting up our devices. So both of the devices that I have here are just devices that can run Meshtastic. This is a Heltec V3.1 and this is a SenseCap T1000E. Both are very similar in the way they operate. This one has built-in GPS and a little built-in audible buzzer, but other than that, it operates pretty much the same way as the other one. For ATAK's purposes, they're going to operate exactly the same. Now, out of the box, these are going to have a default configuration inside, which we have already seen once in this video, if you stuck around for the initial part, which was this channel here being set to long fast. When we're in that long fast channel, we can go and look at our low ROS settings and see that we are in frequency slot 20. This is the situation where ATAK will be a problem for the rest of the mesh. If you're using ATAK, I imagine you're going to want your things isolated anyway. You don't really want everybody knowing where you're at, especially at the precision that ATAK broadcasts it. So what we're going to do here is actually set up our own privatized mesh to use ATAK on. The way you should do that is really just by changing your primary channel in the channels. So let's do that. I'm just going to create a new channel name called ATAK, and you see that it's going to automatically generate a PSK key. I can save that and send it. Then, if I go back to my low RAW settings, we'll see that it chose frequency slot 79. Again, that's calculated. So if you were to enter ATAK onto your primary channel on your device, then you would also be on frequency slot 79 on your device. Effectively, if you were nearby, you and I could use ATAK together using just that. The important thing to note, though, is we're going to need that PSK key right there, because that is randomly generated. So I'm going to copy that and save it for later, because we're going to need it to program this device over here. And don't forget, whenever you first set up a device, you have to set the region to wherever you are located. In this case, we're in the United States. So I'm going to connect to this one here, which has a default pin. The screen is actually broken, so I had to set the default pin so I can access it. And I'm going to go in to the radio config again, go to channels, and I'm going to change the name of my primary channel again to ATAK with all capital letters. And notice that that PSK key is different than the other one was, again, because it's randomly generated. So I'm going to take the one that I copied, which is on my clipboard here, paste it, and click Save, and send it. Now, both of these devices are set up to use ATAK together and stay off of the network. And the way I know that is because in my low RAW settings here, we can see it automatically picked frequency slot 79 with that primary channel named ATAK. We can also see down here the override frequency in megahertz. You can change this if you like, but generally it's not needed. But it is a representation of what that frequency slot is equivalent to. In this case, frequency slot 79 is 921.625 megahertz. At this point, we are ready to use ATAK with our devices, and we will not be causing any grief for those around us, assuming that there isn't already a nearby mesh on frequency slot 79. So I'm going to keep this tablet connected to this device here. I'm going to open up my ATAK app, which already has the ATAK plugin installed. Yep, there is our Meshtastic plugin logo saying that we are connected to the Meshtastic app. Now I'm going to connect to this one using my cell phone. So now I'm connected to this device with this version of ATAK and this device with the ATAK that is on my cell phone. So with ATAK open on both devices, now would be a great opportunity for me to show you exactly what's going on our Meshtastic network. In my debug panel, I can take a look at the protobuf stream that's coming across the Meshtastic network. There we go. When I open up my debug panel, I can see what kinds of packets are being transmitted with the ATAK plugin active. We can see, just based on timestamps, that we've got some communication here that's happening mere seconds from each other, mere milliseconds after each other. And when you have a few devices on a network, these ATAK plugin packets are going to completely saturate your mesh network. Since ATAK has nothing to do with regular Meshtastic use, we want to keep that data off of the regular mesh, and that's why we're doing it this way. So our ATAK network, so to speak, is isolated from everybody else. We're using a completely different frequency, and we're using a completely different channel. But we can see very clearly with all of this traffic that's coming through, it's kind of moving. But you can imagine if you're in, say, a vehicle, or you are simply walking, the ATAK application is going to be sending a lot of position updates over the network. And if you are on a regular mesh network, those position updates are going to completely saturate things, and it's just not going to work. You might even find that ATAK doesn't work at all in that situation. But believe me, the rest of your peers and the rest of the people that have worked hard to set up a mesh in your area are going to be much more upset seeing those ATAK packets come across their network, because it means they aren't able to use it the way they wanted to. So generally, just be a gentleman. Set up your ATAK with its own private channel on your primary channel, so that way you're on a completely different frequency than the regular Meshtastic network. I would also advise that when you set up your primary channel with whatever name you choose, that you go back and you check your low RAW settings and ensure that the frequency slot changed from 20 to something else. There is a chance that something else that you could put in there could hop onto frequency slot 20, and you would still be stuck on your local mesh. So make sure to change that up. That way you're not interfering. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was informative. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't make a lot of sense to you, I might try to refine it a little bit better. This is my first video in quite some time, so I apologize if it doesn't exactly make a ton of sense right off the bat, but I will be sticking around in the comments to answer any of your questions if you have them. So please leave a comment down below if you have them. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more.